We are very pleased to have Mr. Irfan Kazi with us. He's the Chief Investment Officer of Swami Fund to talk about it. Irfan has more than 27 years of international work experience in alternate investments. He has held senior investment responsibilities in 8 funds, including Swami, which is a US dollar 1.4 billion fund. So we would love to hear on more on the Swami Fund, I think, which is much sought after by all the developers. Over to you, Irfan.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak about the fund. And since I've done several times before already, I thought I'll be a little less boring this time. I'll speak about nuances and insights that we've discovered over time. So, it is not something that is that it is something that we've learned over time. It is knowledge that has developed over time. It is knowledge that is developed after seeing the various deals that we have. Now, there are many good things about the Swami Fund, right? And we've gone into in several webinars before. But I'd like to now capture that in what I want to present as the three C's, right? Which is that this fund is cost competitive. This fund is a credible alternative, and this fund provides funding till completion of the project. And let me just quickly elaborate on that. And for the discussion today, what I intend to do is speak not just about what's good about the fund. I'll also, upfront and in a very candid way, tell you what's not so good about us, right? And why this is not going to be it is going to go beyond mere funding that we provide. How we will, we will work with the developer in the entire governance of the project. So, like I said in the beginning, the three C's. This is cost competitive. This is funding that is provided at 12%. It is back-ended, completely back-ended. It is focused on construction. So during the construction period, there is no cash flow that comes back to us. The funding goes entirely into the project. So that's the good thing. The other is credible. And when I say credible, I am referring to the fact that we get added credibility to the project. And that is reflected not in our words, but in collections, in cash flows that the project experiences as soon as we come in. And I'm saying this, as a matter of fact, I'm saying this from the experience that we've already seen in the projects we've invested so far, that as soon as we come in, all the home buyers are informed of the fact that Swami Fund has come in, and we see improved collections. Projects that have not seen collections for several quarters or even several years have started seeing collections from existing home buyers, and those are bound to come because you start seeing site activity. You even see walk-ins and sales, and even though we place very little or no reliance on sales, project have started seeing sales. So that is the credibility we get in. And finally, completeness. Unlike any other lender out there, we are putting our money where our mouth is, and we are saying that we will complete the project. We will not provide funding and say we've done our bit. We will ensure that the project is completed. So that makes us significantly different from anyone out there. It is also last mile funding. And when we are doing last mile funding to ensure completeness of the project, we are placing little or no reliance on sales, and that's important because in an environment going ahead, while we are hopeful and all current signs indicate that sales will pick up, if they don't, if collections don't come in, if some home buyers do not pay up as they were supposed to, we will still ensure that the project is completed. That's a key difference in the kind of funding we give. But that aside, there are also several negatives to what we do, right? And I think that it pays that you are well informed, and you should know that when you are looking at Swami funding, it is not just funding; it's a package deal. So before we do the funding, for example, we do a detailed due diligence. We do not just rely on the information given to us. We do a complete due diligence, and that's one of the things that happens. We also insist on a project management company representative to be at the site at all times, not visiting the site once a quarter or once a month, present at the site at all times. And that PMC representative will give us site reports every day. He's our man on the spot, on the construction site there, and we rely on him to approve all expenditures. We rely on him to give us a report on manpower at the site, material at the site, safety precautions that are being undertaken or safety precautions that are absent at the site, and so on. One of the things that we also ensure is that almost all the expenses, or all expenses, are by bank transfers, checks, drafts, and so on. We will try to completely weed out the cash component. That is part of the overall agenda of the government as well. And this funding will be used to reimburse primarily those expenses which are done through bank transfers, through checks, through electronic transfers, and so on. We will not be reimbursing cash expenses. Even petty expenses, we will try and find a mechanism of to the extent possible, ensuring that those expenses take place through legitimate channels. So that's that. We will also require all projects to comply to a very high regulatory standard. And this is going to be very different. Life is not going to be the same for any project that comes through and takes Swami funding. And that's important because normally, projects have some key compliances in place, and they simply overlook. And there is no more polite way of saying that, but they simply overlook a lot of the regulatory requirements, compliances that are required. So, for example, if there is an environmental clearance in place, I believe an environmental compliance report has to be submitted every 6 months. I can say for a fact that most of the projects don't do it. I can also say for the fact that all the projects in the Swami that get Swami funding will be doing that. So that's one. We will also, there are a lot of other laws which construction sites don't generally comply with, even though they're specifically applicable to those sites. So, for example, there is a Building and Other Construction Workers Act. There is a Interstate Migrant Workers Act. There is Contract Labor Act. There is Employee State Insurance Act, Employee Provident Fund Act, Minimum Wages Act. And while most labor contractors and developers would have heard about it, with the Swami funding comes the requirement that compliance has to be ensured with all of these. We will help the company comply with this, but we will not turn a blind eye if compliance is not done. Some of these compliances will be CPs to our funding. Some of these will be CSs to be achieved within a few months of the funding. And there'll be others which will be in the nature of covenants, which have to be observed and complied with at all times during this. Even though we try and do deals as fast as possible, there will still be some delays, right? And those delays will be for various reasons. I'll just get into that later. But one of the things that comes with, one of the disadvantages of Swami funding, and I'm putting it as a disadvantage, is while the current project is not completed, we will require the developer to go slow or completely halt future launches. In fact, if there are assets, if there is property that is going to be launched in the future, we will require that be given to the existing lenders to as security, so that the existing lenders move a little faster. The existing lenders get some security to rely on, and therefore they look at Swami funding. They let Swami funding come in by ceding the charge. We will also not allow speculative components. So if a project has, let's say 3 buildings, 2 are launched, 2 are semi-constructed, sales have happened, we will look at just those 2 buildings. We will not look at the 3rd building for almost all criteria, including the net worth positive criteria. But while this is a general rule and an insight, this is not a hard and fast rule. There will always be exceptions, and that's where the human element and the investment analysis comes in, where we will decide what's right and what's the best way of doing the deal. Finally, one more negative, if I can put it that way, about the Swami funding is our emphasis is only on construction. Generally speaking, construction is paced at the rate at which sales occur. So if sales pick up, construction picks up. If sales are low, construction is put on the back burner, and so on. That's not the approach that our funded projects will be allowed to take. Our funded projects, the emphasis will entirely be on construction. They have to continue construction. They have to continue construction on multiple fronts, and that regardless of whether sales are happening or not, because the fundamental reason why this fund is coming in is based on the premise that completed inventory will sell. So our day one objective is to complete construction, and we will try and ensure that construction is completed, and at least funding will not be a barrier to the pace of construction. That aside, all that set aside, very quickly into the criteria and some nuances into the criteria, right? So, for example, we deal only with affordable and mid-income housing. The definitions are, all over the place right now. What I need to emphasize is we can also look at plotted, and we will calculate the cost of plotted developments on a comparative basis when we do it. There is also this thing that 90% of the total project should be affordable and mid-income. Again, if it's not 90% and if it's 80%, come to us. We'll find a way of doing the deal. And the general way of doing the deal is, that incremental 10%, 15%, 5%, 10% portion, which does not meet the affordable and mid-income criteria, can be funded by the developer, so that we fund the rest of the project, and therefore the project reaches completion. We mentioned we do brownfield projects only. Our criteria for brownfield is 30%. And what needs to be remembered is when we are calculating the 30% criteria, we are talking of cost incurred. We are not talking of cost paid. So if an expense is done and there is a trade creditor, that's good enough for us. We will take care of the trade creditors. And as far as project completion milestone is concerned, it has crossed the 30% criteria. What we can also do where projects do not meet the 30% criteria is slice and dice the project, reduce the denominator so that it meets the 30% criteria. And when we are talking of costs, we are talking of all costs. We are talking of construction costs. We are talking of land costs. We are talking of FSI costs. We are talking of rent costs. When it comes to rehab projects, we are talking of fungible FSI, incentive FSI, construction FSI, and everything. The SWAMIH funding is not only for stalled projects. The SWAMIH funding is for projects that are stressed. When we talk of stressed projects, we are referring to any project where the pace of construction has got hampered by the lack of funding. And the lack of the hindrance to the pace is because the funding is not coming in from the traditional channels, which is it's not coming in from new home buyers, it's not coming in from your existing home buyers, it's not coming in from your existing lenders. All these contribute to the stress. That's when you come to us. You need not wait for the situation to reach a point where even a resolution becomes difficult. So as long as the project is stressed, you can come to us. When we talk of net worth positive criteria for the fund, let's say the project cost is 100 crores. We are looking at funding, about 75, 80, 90 crores. We are not looking at providing a piecemeal funding of 25 crores. A lot of developers assume, let's say a 25 crore funding, decide that their project is net worth, and get very hurt when we say that's not the way we look at things. We look at complete funding. And even the pricing that goes into the net worth criteria, for example, that pricing has to be discovered by either the historical sales or it has to be adequately justified by sales in the immediate vicinity and so on. So a lot of thought will go into there. Project cost, for example, you'll be amazed at the number of project cost estimates that come to us that do not include the GST component. GST component has to be there. All the expenses will be incurred by check or draft. Marketing expenses have to be there. Contingency expenses have to be there. Unpaid liabilities have to be provided for. Administration costs have to be provided for. Finally, about deal closure. Deal closure will never happen immediately after the final clearance also. There are a couple of hurdles that need to be crossed even after the final clearance. And those hurdles are: one, lender approval. Lender approval has to come in. Two, home buyer approval. In a lot of cases where the project especially is stressed or stalled for a long time, there are significant home buyer penalties that have come in. If we consider the home buyer penalties, the project is net worth negative and we cannot do it, right? So we have to assume that the home buyers will agree to an extended date. And when they agree to an extended date, the project becomes net worth positive and therefore we can do it. We will also look at key regulatory approvals being in place. So at least the key ones should already be there or the company has to apply for and get before our funding comes in. And finally, any outstanding disputes, to the extent possible, should be settled. For example, in the project cost, we also look at liabilities that have already crystallized from litigations and so on. Those liabilities will also be provided for in the project cost that we were discussing earlier. So our project cost becomes comprehensive, robust. It can withstand the test of time and will hold true till the project is completed. I'm running out of time, about 1.5 minutes left. So I'll just cover one last point, which is a source of discussion for a lot of people, which is ceding of first charge by the existing lender. So several points here, right? One, in a lot of projects, there is no existing lender, so this is not an issue at all. That project can come to us. Two, banks and NBFCs are now far more willing, and let me emphasize that, far more willing to consider ceding charge to the SWAMIH fund than they were ever before. So just because they've said no in the past doesn't mean that they'll say no again. Three, AIFs, funds, the projects that have taken money from private equity funds do not have the seeding first charge requirement, etc. So seeding charge becomes that much easier for them. And finally, with banks and NBFCs, the reason why we've come so far with them and the reason that they are now giving a seeding charges, we are willing to give them a first charge on a portion of the cash flows or a first charge on the portion of the project assets, so that they still hold a first charge on their books, and restructuring and write down they have to get significantly reduced. As a result, we have seen that we have got approval for 36 deals that will complete almost 30,000 houses. We have got preliminary approval for another 99 deals that will complete about 60,000 houses. So approvals are coming in. Please do not hold back your proposal on the understanding that your existing lender will not. He may not have done in the past, but he's more likely to seed charge now than he was in the past. That's that. I just thought I'll quickly cover some basic parameters, our scoreboard, and nuances that we've seen in deals over time. Thank you so much for hearing me out.
Irfan, thank you so much for building the reassurance that we developers wanted to hear from you and clarifying many things. And I'm sure you would be available offline to further take their queries. Thank you, Irfan. I really appreciate your insights.
Sure. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, the team at NAREDCO.